I would say don't just start filming me without asking me.
Oh my goodness.
So you can't just use me for social media and not.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. It's been 12 days since the slap that was heard around the world, and the Academy have finally made up their minds on how to punish the once much-loved leading man, Will Smith, known for his own sense of humor and relaxed attitude to life. Before we get to that, though, before we get to the punishment and the acknowledgements, we're actually going to deal with the letter written by the CEO of the Academy, just where they decide what they're going to do. I want to deal with a murky aspect that we need to get clarity on. Although the Academy did ask Will Smith to leave after the slap and prior to him receiving his Best Actor award, we know Will Smith remained in his front row seat regardless and was later applauded, like kind of in a standing ovation. The question is, what really happened during that interval? So we're going to deal with that, and we're going to deal with the actual letter and what the Academy has actually decided. And then I also want to talk to you about that "don't use me" comment that has recently resurfaced in a video from Instagram from quite a long time ago. And we'll get to that in a moment. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So, according to Deadline, the version from Will Smith is that the folks responsible for the Oscars, Rubin and Hudson, sort of gently asked Smith's rep, Meredith O'Sullivan, they sort of gently said, would you mind asking Will to sort of leave the Dolby? Would you mind just asking him to leave the theater? Not demanding that he leave, just sort of gently sort of asking if he would do that. That is in terms of Will Smith's, those people close to him, that's their position on the thing. And then before Denzel Washington and Tyler Perry consoled him, that's when the rep passed on this request to him. So before anybody consoled him, Meredith O'Sullivan, his rep, went to him and passed on this kind of request. And Deadline sort of put it quite cleverly. They say, perhaps he didn't capture the severity of the moment. But Will Smith said, no, I think I'm going to stay. Just tell them sorry, and that's that kind of thing. Now, one does wonder if Will Smith did leave right then. In other words, if he took responsibility for what had happened, right, and he had left right then and there, which would have been kind of, in a way, the adult thing to do, maybe even the right thing to do, then you could have had a situation where half an hour later, when he was voted Best Actor and he was absent, there may have actually been a sense of sympathy, a sense of also that things had been righted in that moment, that where he should have gotten acknowledgement, he didn't. He paid a price kind of in a fair way, but that may have seemed quite unfair, and there may have kind of just been a sense almost of justice in that moment. Do you see what I'm saying? And instead, and the article also puts it quite cleverly in Deadline, they say, with no adults taking control or responsibility, Smith instead stayed in his front row seat. And this went on for close to an hour, to certainly over half an hour. And then, of course, he went back on stage, accepted his Best Actor award, and was sort of met with mixed feelings from the global audience, which sort of, I think it's not just the slap that has sort of fired up the internet. It's also the contrast, the mismatch of what followed. The standing ovation, him getting a Best Actor award, and the sort of kind of lack of contrition. And Deadline also mentions that, the lack of contrition when he's seen partying afterwards. So you sort of have almost these two different people. The one that's quick to anger, that's unforgiving, that's hard, and then the tearful, sensitive, actor receiving the award and being grateful, and then you have almost a third version, the guy who's sort of partying it up afterwards like nothing actually happened. And so the other, so in a weird way, this kind of reads like a true crime story where everyone's giving a different story of, you know, the version of what did happen. Will Packer he's the producer of the show. You know, the question was, did he actually ask Will Smith to leave? And the idea you get is that he left this decision in Chris Rock's hands. He didn't decide. It was like, Chris Rock, how do you feel about it? And I think the way it was conveyed to him was, you know, do you want us to physically remove him? Do you want us to get the police or whatever? But I mean, they could have just sort of said, you know, would it help you if he is just escorted out of the building, not press charges, just taken out of the building? And actually that may have been better for everyone concerned, because can you imagine what it was like continuing to present with this guy in front of you? And of course the television audience are also sort of aware of that. In any event, now we get to the open letter to the Academy sent by Rubin and Hudson on Friday, right? And so they talk about the 94th Oscars, you know, that was meant to be a celebration. And anyway, they basically just admit, they say, quote, "We did not adequately address the situation in the room. For this, we are sorry. This was an opportunity for us to set an example, and we fell short. We were unprepared for the unprecedented." They don't really go into any detail there. They don't really say how they didn't adequately address it. So it's still sort of a little bit of a wishy-washy apology, but they nevertheless admit that they could have handled it better and that they actually didn't handle it properly. And so, you know, again, you kind of get this idea of no adults taking control or responsibility. You know, aren't those words weirdly ironic, right? And I don't mean this in a mean way, but even Chris Rock hasn't really spoken about what he went through, just to say, this is what it felt like. This is, in other words, him also taking responsibility, just in the sense of, this is what happened, you know? And it seems like when bad things happen, seems no one knows what to do except how to make it look not so bad. You sort of speak it or spin it in a way where things are better than they actually were, and you try and mitigate and you try and preserve your image. You don't actually deal with what happened in an honest way. You just try and postpone it or delay it or minimize it, or all of those things. And how good are we at dealing with bad things when they happen? Honestly. So in any event, the decision was then made, and it's expressed in this letter where the board say, "We've decided for a period of 10 years from April 8th, 2022, so obviously until April 8th, 2032, Will Smith will not be permitted to attend any Academy events or programs. We won't see him at the Oscars for 10 years. And can you imagine that? I mean, he certainly can't come back next year, and that's something I predicted. I thought whether he's resigned or not, whatever the protocols are surrounding that, we're not going to see him next year. He's not going to be handing over the best actor to the next best actor, which is the tradition. That I could see from a mile away. And so now that has been, that position has certainly been vindicated, I guess. And then they talk about expressing their deep gratitude, etc., etc. But I want to talk about something else that's also really interesting, is where Will Smith, it's an article that came up on the New York Post, but also emerged on Reddit, where you actually have Jada recording him at home without his permission, and you just sense that there's a bit of discord there. I wouldn't appreciate the same thing either. Someone just starting to film you live, ask you questions when it suits them, not necessarily when it suits you. And you get a sense of opprobrium from him, where he's not very happy and she persists regardless. So you can see they're both quite strong personalities. He seems to be occasionally quite moody and even prickly, although understandably in that situation. And she can also be, it seems to be quite pushy, certainly in terms of that. And so that's just quite an interesting dynamic that's been exposed recently. And maybe that is worth exploring a little bit further in a subsequent episode. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribed. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.